Hey everyone, my name is Ford from NorCalThrills. I'm bringing you an update today from California's Great America for June 19th, 2021. Well, actually, it's mostly some info from South Bay Shores, with a couple of dry park updates thrown in. I was finally able to grab a reservation for Great America's new water park, and wanted to share my experience since this opening really is the biggest update to Great America since the park opened in May. But it wasn't the only one. I'll share some information about rides reopening, as well as the status of a handful of the remaining closed rides at the park. So let's get started. Let's begin with the slides at South Bay Shores. I rode a pair of the new slides in the Pacific Surge Complex, Feeding Frenzy and one of the Shark Reef Plunge slides. They were both a ton of fun, and the Shark Reef Plunge slide is by far the most intimidating and scary slide in the entire park. The rest of the slides and pools in the park are as fresh and vibrant as promised, and are the fantastic upgrade from Boomerang Bay that we sorely needed. If you need to buy a towel, bathing suit, or other supplies, South Bay Shores has a couple of stores for you. Just outside of the front gates is a small pop-up store and a minibus. Then inside of the park, Clippers Tide Pool Treasures and Guppy Gear will cater to all your water park related needs. Surfside Supplies sits just outside of South Bay Shores, but we'll have a similar assortment of bathing suits and towels. Pier 76 Cafe was where I ate my lunch. The restaurant interior features plenty of the same murals that I'll praise the rest of the park for. The restaurant was set up like Maggie's in the dry park, where you get one entree and one side, with the food behind the glass in front of you for you to pick. I had shrimp and mac and cheese, and found the shrimp to be a lot bigger and more filling than I'm used to, although I would like to see the park offer cocktail sauce to go along with the shrimp. Either way, it was a delicious meal and a great use of my dining plan, with slightly more unique food than standard theme park fare. The other restaurants in the park that I didn't eat at included Shark Bites, which serves more standard theme park food, and Sandbar, which serves a handful of interesting looking drinks that I plan on trying on my next visit. The thing that blew me away the most was just how much of the park's story you could gather by walking around. That started in the morning with the town of South Bay Shores mayor greeting guests at the entrance gate. The mayor would later roam around the park interacting with guests. We can actually see the mayor's house back in Breakers Bay. I mean, the mayor's a busy person. Look at all the titles they've had in the city. The K South Bay Shore radio booth also provided an answer to a question I had: what the Pelican Plunge contest was. The live radio host mentioned that the contest would be happening at 5:45 p.m. that evening, and I gathered that it was some sort of jumping contest for kids. And that piece ties together the entire story for me. This is a small, quirky seaside town that hosts an annual jumping or diving contest, and today is that once-in-a-year date. That explains why the mayor greets us at the gate, and the townspeople are eager to share their talents to entertain us. Speaking of the townspeople, I was impressed with the streetmosphere that looked to be set up at the park. I managed to catch an impromptu musical show, but there were stations all over the park that looked like they were set up for street shows, although I didn't see them being performed. A couple of other small things I wanted to point out around the park. First, the grassy gardens area is awesome. The grass is super lush, making it a great place to sit and relax a little while in a water park that tends to be concrete dominated. Second, I want to showcase some of the awesome murals you can find throughout the park. They really do add a lot. Third, my favorite small thing the park impressed me with was, instead of just plopping down a standard white Dippin' Dot stand, the park added some paint to the stand to make it actually fit with the rest of the architecture. To wrap up this section of the update, let me reiterate how impressed I was with South Bay Shores. The park has a backstory and detail that rivals or exceeds the best of the theming efforts that Cedar Fair has done chain-wide, and is by far the most detailed water park Cedar Fair has built. The new slide tower is a great addition, giving the park a new centerpiece attraction, and the rest of the existing attractions look great. The restaurants are great additions as well, and the street atmosphere sets the park apart. Hopefully guests appreciate the level of detail that went into the park, and Cedar Fair continues to apply this principle throughout the rest of Great America. If you haven't gotten out to South Bay Shores yet this year, do yourself a favor and do it. You won't be disappointed with your experience. Next, let's take a look at the status of some of the rides in the dry park. Like I mentioned might happen in a previous update, Mass Effect reopened as California's pandemic restrictions have been lifted. The ride is operating like normal at full capacity, except the ride is running every 30 minutes instead of continuously like it did in 2019. When I rode it, the line reached capacity before it's showtime, so if you do want to ride, make sure you're there a little early. Similarly, the Star Tower is now running, offering guests a great view of Great America and the surrounding area. The 3 remaining closed rides are at very different stages in their repair process. Whitewater Falls had its entire lift rebuilt, and structurally it looked like it was just about ready to reopen at any point. Hopefully it does soon, as the ride is great in the hot summer we're experiencing lately. Berserker's vehicles weren't on the track, but based on the scheduled ride closures on the park website, it seems like it should be reopening in the same time frame as Whitewater Falls. Orbit, on the other hand, seems to be lagging behind. The ride remains under a tarp partially deconstructed with little visible progress since May. I have to assume that, like Berserker, the ride cars are being refurbished out of public view. I'll keep checking on these rides as I visit the park. Now let's do a few quick hits of some miscellaneous updates around Great America. Following the state's guidance, masks are now not required outdoors for all guests, and optional indoors for vaccinated individuals. Masks were still being worn by around 40% of the guests at the park in my estimate. We also see the return of the Space Beagle show a few times a day at the stage in Planet Snoopy. This and Peanuts Block Party seem like the only shows that will run this year. And then this isn't an update as much as wanted to kind of think out loud. I spent some time at the park today looking at haunt facades. As long as nothing crazy happens with COVID, I'd assume that we'd see some sort of Halloween event in September, with how popular it is at the park. I wonder if the previously announced Shadowlands, Live by the Sword, Die by the Sword, will open in that scenario. I guess we'll have to see how COVID and staffing numbers play out over the next couple months. And finally, I'd like to share a couple more clips of the rides. Not a ton today, but would like to share the ones I did get. And there you have it, another update from Great America. I hope you all do get the chance to visit South Bay Shores this summer and see just how justified the hype I'm giving it is. As for me, my next visit to the park will be around the middle of July for the start of Taste of Orleans and hopefully the reopening of Whitewater Falls and Berserker. But I'll keep you updated.